what happened when we use an incomplete rate history. There are two main factors that influence the PBU data: the recent rate history and cumulative production. And this is a quite common problem on exploration appraisal wells and on some occasion pre-drill wells also. So you've got pressure from a downhole gauge, and for the rate in green we've got the measure rate from meters on the test separator. And on this log plot I've shown you the response from, let's say, this PBU, which lasts 24 hours, as you can see on the log scale. So what may happen on exploration and appraisal and some pre-drill wells during cleanup is that the flow meters might be on bypass on the test separator. So the flow rate will be 0 as a rate measurement. And the analyst might neglect the rate at this point and assume a rate of 0 as well. Although if you look at the pressure, the well is flowing. So we should estimate the rate and we should not neglect it. So if we estimate the rate, as I've shown you here in red, and we can use different techniques to estimate this rate, then we will have this PBU response here. So in blue I've got the response with this blue rate here, and in red I've got the response estimating the rates. So now by neglecting the rate, we won't see this decrease in the derivative plot and this late stabilization from 10 hours to 24 hours onwards. And that could be due to different reasons. This could indicate to us a limited perforation, or even the presence of better reservoir properties further away from the well. Also, on some occasions, that could be due to the presence of boundary near the wellbore. On production, we might have another type of problem, which is to oversimplify the rate history. So in red, we've got the complete rate history, and in blue, we've got simplification of the rate history, which is a constant rate production period of rate equal to the final rate before the PBU of interest, and of duration equal to TPE, which is the Horner equivalent time. And this is defined by dividing the cumulative production with the rate before the PBU. So on the log plot, I've shown you the two responses. In red when we use the complete rate history, and in dark blue when we use a constant rate, a single constant rate production period. And we see that in this case, oversimplifying the rate will bring some new features in the derivative. So instead of seeing a nice and long stabilization indicative of radio flow regime, then we see a decrease in the derivative here. So some guidelines on rate history. So on the two previous slides, we saw the impact of neglecting the rate for exploration and appraisal well, and oversimplifying the rate for production well. And we saw that that introduced some error on the derivative. To try to avoid introducing these new features in the derivative, we should try to consider the entire rate history. And my recommendation to you is to never neglect the rate. If you still want to simplify the data, you could do so as I've shown you here in this plot. You could introduce an initial constant rate production period, but then this needs to be followed by the most recent rate history before PBU of interest. So for example, you will have your PBU here of duration delta t, your most recent rate history, and from a certain time then you can simplify it with an initial constant rate production of rate QE, which is equal to sort of final rate in your period, and of duration equal to TPE, which is the cumulative production in this period in red divided by this rate. This initial constant rate production could cover up to 60% of the total cumulative production. And that is coming from a study in this ASPE paper, which I recommend you to read. So we could use anything between 0% of the total cumulative production before this PBU, so that will mean that we use the entire rate history, or we could use up to 60%, so at this point we've got our total cumulative volume before the PBU, and we take 60% of that, and that will fit with this initial constant rate production period. If we take 100% of the total cumulative production, then we will end up with only one constant rate production period just before the PBU. and that will introduce some erroneous features on the derivative as we saw on the previous slide.